Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning human-read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure.
Hello and welcome to Empower Dyslexia. I'm your host, Stephen Yearout, and on this show, we're here to help you become a better partner in education. On this show, we discuss dyslexia and other related disorders. We discuss research. We speak to experts in the field. We speak about special education law at the local, state, and federal level. And my favorite part is we talk to people with personal stories. Please be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave comments. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm. We are now on every platform out there for podcasts. So if you like to listen to these type of podcasts, you can get that there. We're on Amazon TV if you want to watch it. We're on YouTube Live and Facebook Live. Today's topic is transition. What happens when you finish high school and you're moving on and you still don't know if college is right for you, or you're going to go to college, or what type of career that you're going to move into, and you've struggled through school your entire life. So we have a really special guest today. He's a co-founder of InventiveLabs. InventiveLabs is a career and business incubator focused on college-aged adults with dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. So, Tom, welcome to Empower Dyslexia. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, thanks, Stephen. I'm excited to be on the show as well. Been a fan for a while and really honored to be able to have this conversation with you.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background, and how did you get to where you're at now, where you're helping our population of young adults who have learning disabilities?
I think probably looking at it, maybe if you kind of look back at my own childhood. So I guess I'd be what was called a struggling student. I went to a Catholic high school years ago, before you had a lot of diagnoses for dyslexia, for ADHD, etc. And definitely have a ton of dyslexic traits myself. And a struggling reader. I was a late reader. It probably wasn't till I was in 5th, 6th grade that I started picking up on reading, and really not into high school before I started getting into a reading level that kind of probably matched or got close to where my peers were. So I had struggled, in school. Eventually I did make it and did go to college. Fortunately, I did well in math, and that kind of pulled me through and got me through an engineering degree. And even that was a challenge in college. But I think once I got into the workforce as an adult, and I started using a lot of the other skills outside traditional school skills, I really started feeling like I could blossom at that time. And I really enjoyed the business world and did quite well in the entrepreneurship community. Helping companies start and grow. And I think a lot of the reasons I was able to do that is the strengths, the perseverance kind of I learned through school. And that kind of fast forward a little bit kind of led me to want to open InventiveLabs with Rick Fiery to help give back to others and help them kind of find their path and really find success in life, as opposed to just success in school.
So can you tell us a little bit about the lab, and what type of services do you offer at the lab?
Yeah. So we started InventiveLabs in 2014. And originally we started as a business incubator. We were basically trying to help folks with learning differences start their own business and get those businesses up and running. And I really enjoyed that. We had some companies kick off and get started. But I think one of our big learnings was that, it's not just starting your own company, the skills that folks have with learning differences can spread in a lot of different areas. So we expanded our program. Some people found that, hey, they just liked building things. They don't like the whole aspect of starting a company. Some found they really like selling what they were, or what others were creating. So we turned into a career prep, helping folks get directly into the workforce. And that's evolved also into a gap year program for folks who aren't, you mentioned the transitional services. So for folks who aren't quite sure what they want to do, the gap year programs gives you a chance to identify, where your strengths are, where your interests are, and then trying to identify a career path for you based on that information.
Yeah, so when we're talking about transitional services, historically, I know here in Texas, if you're on a 504 plan, there are no transitional services when you're moving through, K-12. And there's definitely not any transition services once you go from high school to college. And I mean, that piece of it is so important because our children have already felt like a failure and don't believe they have the skills to move forward with their education. So, having that that place that they can go and get that mentorship and understand that, hey, yes, you can move on to college. Yes, you can do these other things. And if that's not the path that is right for you, here are some other ways that you can be just as productive member of society as you want to be.
Yeah, we're big fans of college because it does give you a lot of advantages, but we realize that's not necessarily the path for everyone. But there's a lot of different ways to do college. Some folks do college by starting with a few courses in community college. We find a lot of folks with learning differences really do well at night school. And one of the interesting things there is in night school, it's typically industry professionals that teach the classes as opposed to career professors. So folks like myself who are, kinesthetic or visual learners, we kind of, work real well with folks who are doing that job and kind of the direct understanding. So we kind of look at multiple paths to work potentially towards a degree, but sometimes that's why you're in the workforce, while you're building up experience as well.
With the adults, young adults that you're working with, how many of them, or what's the percentage that you see that is really leaning towards that gap year and trying to understand or trying to make that decision on whether they're going to make that leap to go to college?
Yeah, it's interesting because as we work with them, we like them to explore multiple paths. What does it look like with college and what does it look like without college? I would say we probably end up about 40% of our folks end up going to college, some sort of college or training afterwards. About 40% end up going towards the workforce, but quite often there's a step to get to the workforce. It might be going to a technical program like General Assembly, which is a coding boot camp, programming boot camp for folks that in 12 weeks you can kind of pick up skill sets. Or it might be going to cosmetology school, or it might be some type of other career training that they go to, and then to the workforce. And probably about 20% of the folks we work with are going to eventually start their own business, and we help them with the business plan and how do you get forward and figure out how you get your company up and running.
I mean, I started my own business in 1999. It was IT. When I ended up quitting school I was a junior in high school, or just going into my junior year in high school, because I thought there was nothing more for me in school. And, it took me about 6 or 7 years before I decided that I've had enough. I've got to do more. I mean, I knew that I could be more. I just had to figure out, okay, what next? So then I ended up going to trade school and doing a lot of things that you're talking about now. And because I knew that I would struggle getting that higher paying job in the industry, I started my own IT company. And I think that's where a lot of, our population with learning disabilities ends up being, because they know they can do more. However, it's just getting that opportunity to step out and prove yourself that you can do what you say that you're able to do.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because to do that, you need to have self-confidence and kind of belief in yourself. And a lot of times in the school system, that can be sucked away from you. So we're big proponents of having folks, something outside of school that can really be their go-to, the thing that kind of gives them confidence and esteem that they can kind of work on and build up. And with that confidence to go and start your own business. I also think in school, when you travel, when you struggle with reading or other components, you're always looking for workarounds and ways to kind of make things work. And I think yourself stepping out and saying, hey, I'll start my own business is a great way of looking at that. It's looking at the big picture and the ability to say, hey, how do I get where I want to be in a holistic view? And I think a lot of folks with learning differences have the ability to do that, whether it's in the corporate environment, whether it's creating their own company and starting their own thing.
So what's the job market look like currently for our young adults that have learning disabilities that you're working with?
It's interesting. It's there's a lot of different stats and numbers out there, but I think in general, folks with learning differences have a higher unemployment rate than folks that don't. I think in some cases, autism, the unemployment rate, even for folks with autism with a college degree, is very high as 80%. I think when you look at dyslexia and ADHD, it's still higher than the average, but definitely not to that extreme. I think the ability to identify where your strengths are, the ability to identify where's a good fit for you in the job market, big things. And people do well at things they enjoy doing. So if you can spend the time to figure out where you fit well, what type of job you'll enjoy doing, the chance of getting employment and maintaining employment goes up much higher. I think on the positive side, from an employer view, folks with learning differences tend to be much more dedicated employees. Retention rates are higher, et cetera. So there's some big advantages for employers to work with folks and that have learning differences and can bring a lot to the table.
I mean, we personally in our house, when we talking to our boys about going to college versus starting out in going and starting your own business right off the bat, is I look at a college degree, unless you're going into a field that college degree is going to help you in. The college degree shows that you have the ability to finish.
Exactly.
It's a door opener. It doesn't mean that you're going to be the best candidate. It doesn't mean that just because you have that piece of paper, you're going to be the best employee. It means that you were able to start something and finish it, and that opens the door. So we always talk to our children about making sure that you have every opportunity for them to say yes. And I know from my perspective, when going out and trying to find a job without a college degree, it's horrendous, because you have so many right now, especially when you have so many other people that are in the out there looking for jobs, and they have 10 times the amount of education you have. Well, where does your application end up? It ends up on the bottom.
And especially now with programs, job sites like Indeed, et cetera, they just weed you right out if you don't have all the criteria. So if college degree is one of the criteria, you don't have it, you never get a look at it, get a look from the company at all. We think that's unfortunate. That's what we try and work with corporate America, is how do you find talent outside of just the college degree? And also for our team, we work with them on, how can you network? We have one of the guys on our team right now, amazing with robotics. He did the first robotics challenges in high school and went through the regionals, made the worlds, and ended up 2 years in a row. 1 year, I think, a top 15 team, and the next year, a top 2 team. He's amazing when it comes to robotics, but for him, going to college and doing the English class and the history class is just not for him. He wants to be working with the robots. And so for him, we're really working on just networking, get in the industry. How do you share your talents? How do you build up a portfolio? And as you said, it's how do you get in the door? Because that college degree sometimes helps you get in the door or keeps the door shut on you. So if you can find a different way to get in the door, then and then show your skill set from there, you definitely have the advantage to kind of move up in your career and take opportunities as they show up.
What does, or let me ask it a different way. What can we do? Empower Dyslexia, your labs. What can we do as the public, as the advocates for our young adults with dyslexia, ADHD, with autism, what can we do to help educate our companies that are out there that are hiring our young adults? What can we do to help get them to understand the value of our sons and daughters?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because if you look at, you talked about ADHD, dyslexia, autism spectrum. If you look at that group combined, that affects, one in every three, one in every four families. So individually, a lot of us deal with it, but we don't take that to the workforce. And we're big proponents of, within your own company, who can you talk to? Depending on the size of the company, is it management? Is it HR? Is it your own boss? And get the discussion going as far as where diversity comes into play. What is the hiring practice? What hiring practice kind of keep people out? The traditional job interview really frustrates me for most jobs. If you want to hire a salesperson, the job interview is the perfect way to do that. The job interview mimics many of the skills that are required in sales during the interview, with follow-up, etc. But most other jobs don't require that. We're looking at companies. There's a company, Ernst Young, EY, that's out there in the financial services, and they've modified some of their hiring practice. They have an alternative way to hire, which is purposely going out, identifying folks, neurodiverse folks who kind of think outside the box, and putting them through a different hiring process, which includes a super week. It's a week long of them coming in, working with a few of the EY employees, working with a team of folks that they're looking to hire, and spending a week on a project, seeing what their skills look like, seeing how they interact. And that process is really powerful because it gives a chance for folks to kind of shine. So I think, the first step is, who do you know and where are you to kind of change those practices and help where you are. And then, of course, there's a larger step like advocacy for organizations like Decoding Dyslexia, et cetera, that kind of work changing laws and changing philosophies in corporate America.
You talk about the application or the interview process, and I believe I told you the story, but right after I got out of IT school, right before I started my company, I went on an interview, went through, I think I interviewed with 4 different people, killed all of that. It was great. But then they took me into the conference room and sat me down with a paper and pencil and told me to write a paragraph or multiple paragraphs about why I was the best person for the job. Because of that one thing, and at that point in time, I hadn't been remediated. So I still had trouble with spelling, and my handwriting was horrendous. I got up and walked out.
Yeah. A situation like that, there's an easy change. Tell us why you're the best candidate, as opposed to writing it down, or if other people have to see it as well, record it. So that is how do you change the hiring practice? Because, for an IT job, I'm not sure that skill of writing an essay is, the best test to see whether you're going to match on the IT requirements or not. So there's these barriers that are put in place at companies that really, keep them from getting the best talent. I think you proved with your own company that you could have been a great asset for them, and they put a barrier in the way that didn't help them and didn't help you.
Well, and then we set up a culture where these employees, let's say that, well, you made a great point that, with dyslexia, 20% of the population is dyslexic. 80% of those people have ADHD also. So, I mean, we can extrapolate this out as far as you want to go. So our population already is in the workforce. However, because of the culture or the shame of the disability, we tend to hide. And we never really show our true worth a lot of times because we're so busy trying to hide our disability.
Yeah, I think at InventiveLabs, one of the things that we really try and do is build that accepting environment and really kind of build it as a model to help others as well. And I think you're right. In the workforce, people do hide. You have it in in K through 12, you can have an IEP, you can have a 504 plan. When you go to college, you have to self-disclose whether you want to say that or not. And there's a lot of people who don't want to say anything because they don't want to be labeled or branded or have it work against them. And in the workforce, it's even more of a challenge. My sister, she's a emergency room nurse, and she works with the surgeon who heads up in the emergency room. Said best surgeon she's ever worked with. Any surgery she needs, she would go. A family, et cetera, would recommend. She worked with the surgeon for a couple years, and not till a couple years of working together did the surgeon disclose that the surgeon was dyslexic, and that changed their whole working relationship. How they passed information, how they communicated, how they sent stuff back and forth changed because that surgeon was able to come forward and say that they were dyslexic. So, having a workforce that allows people to talk about where they struggle, we all struggle. Some of us reading and writing, others communication skills, some of us social anxiety, whatever it may be, we all struggle. And to be able to be in an environment where you can talk about your struggles, where you can be open to talk about what you do well, everyone acknowledges it. For us, that's huge. And I think that ties into both the work environment and a school environment. We kind of have an accepting school checklist that we provide for folks as well. Does my school do these things as being an accepting environment?
So you mentioned communication. So if you go to any job site there is and look at the job requirements, anything over $50,000 a year is going to say communication skills is excellent.
Yep. Good oral and written communication skills. Yep. It's like cut and paste. Doesn't matter what the job is. That's going to show up. Yep. HR just drops it in there.
And I mean, a lot of times we see that and you end up shying away from taking that leap and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, I did that just as an experiment. I went out to job sites and I actually put on there that I have a learning disability or have a disability. And I was way overqualified for every job that I applied for. Not one callback, not one email back, nothing. I wanted to see with my skills and my resume the way that it is, would somebody take a look at it? And you brought this up earlier, these computerized based job market sites, they weed you out before you ever get the opportunity to have a live one-on-one conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I think most people when they hire, they kind of see it as a funnel. Mm-hmm. You have a job, you have 10, 50, whatever number of applications. They're just looking for which ones can I remove? Because we have a difficult time making decisions when you have too much data. So you just go through this process of what can I remove till you get down to 2, 3, 4 applicants where you can kind of wrap your head around which one would be the best one. I think that's the standard practice, but I think more and more companies are now leaning towards how do you go find talent? It's a different mindset. How do I go find people with the skills that I need? So instead of looking to weed out, you're looking to kind of find what those skills are. And that's exactly what companies like SAP and Microsoft and EY that I mentioned earlier are trying to do now with their neurodiversity hiring. They're trying to go out and find the skills, not what weeds people out, but what makes them a strong candidate for this. And I think there's a lot of learnings from that. Microsoft is also, I think they feel many of their developers, programmers are probably on the spectrum. And by hiring more people specifically through an autism program, they're getting dialogue going. More and more of their developers can, free to talk about, hey, this is where I struggle. When I had diagnosis on the spectrum as a kid, I didn't want to mention it. So the ability to get that communication going is huge. And it creates a more accepting environment, an environment people want to work at, a more productive environment. There's just so many advantages. And it's a mindset shift of trying to identify where folks' strengths are, as opposed to this constant filter of how can I filter people out? Can I filter people out?
Yeah, I mean, if you open the lines of communication and people feel free to talk about where they struggle, a lot of people don't want to talk about struggle because it's too painful most of the time. I, on the other hand, I want to know where somebody's struggling because I might be able to have some type of accommodation. I may have, some other way that we can help that person be successful. I mean, really, a good leader is going to do whatever they can to help that person become successful. And time and time again, it's I don't want to say anything because I'm embarrassed about it. So I'm glad to hear that there's a shift in hiring processes and that discussion opening up to where, our population, our young adults that are going into the workforce, have the opportunity to let somebody know, hey, look, here's the areas that I struggle in. It's going to cause less frustration on me, and I'm not having to hide, and it's going to cause less frustration on our supervisors or boss, because they're going to know what it is that we're dealing with, and they're not going to just go, well, this person's obviously not doing what we asked them to do. They're refusing to do the work or whatever. They understand what's going on.
Yeah, the simple question of why.
Yeah.
Why you're struggling getting this down, why folks want to be productive, folks want to learn, folks want to do well. It's just when you run into challenges, sometimes you don't want to articulate where we struggle or why we're struggling on that. That's a lot. I think, especially, I've experienced, you probably as well, even though we've had successes in life, you still kind of have that kid who struggled in school that goes back. So trying to keep a positive self-image of yourself, the ability to reframe, the ability for yourself and others to be able to remind you what you do really well. That's part of what we're trying to build in our environment. And as you said, a good manager will do that as well. I managed folks for a number of years, and I always felt, what do you do well? What don't you do well? It's usually balances each other out. You do well at this, hence you kind of struggle when you kind of flip the table on that skill. So quite often what you do well what your strength is can also be your weakness. So understanding yourself is really a powerful piece. I think it goes towards your own personal happiness, living a joyful life, which I think is important. And I think just fully embracing who you are, to be able to share with others, defining yourself as dyslexic is great, but that can be defined as a stigma or a deficit. But you can also define yourself as dyslexic as part of who you are, with a lot of strengths and a lot of skills, and all the positives that come from that experience as well. So as you look at differences as opposed to deficits, to us, we feel language is important. And that's what we try and instill at InventiveLabs. It's what we try and instill with the companies and the organizations that we work with. So
if you have the opportunity to speak to, our juniors and seniors currently, what's some advice that you can give them that has come out of the lab? What advice can you give them for the next steps?
I think that's pretty powerful, because that's a tough time to be as a junior and senior. What's the question you always get? What college are you going to? Like, all the helpful aunts and uncles and friends of the family, et cetera. That's the question you get, what college? There's a lot of pressure built in to kind of figure out college. We really like to think of your late teens and your 20s as, a time to learn, a time to figure out who you are and what you like doing. So that basically means do things, try things out. You tried out IT, it worked for you, it was great. Tried out technology, but try out art, try out IT, try out automobiles, cosmetology, whatever it is that kind of you might think you're interested in. There seems to be a rush to get to be 21 and get a job and be out there. And for us, we really see that time frame to explore, figure out what job's really going to make you happy. And maybe you don't find it till you're 25 or you're 30, but you still have most of your working career to kind of find that. So we like to say for juniors and seniors, use the next 10 years to explore what you like doing, what you don't like doing, find a job that's going to be a good match for you. And also there's a great book, Design Your Life. It's written by two professors from Stanford University in the Stanford University Design Lab. And they go through an exercise of trying to identify what careers are a good match. And it's really written for adults, but it's great for high schoolers as well. And they do a thing called a good time journal to pay attention to what you do for a few weeks. Identify what brings you energy, what brings you engagement. In the ADHD world, it's a hyperfocus, what really lets you kind of focus and you kind of really enjoy. But make sure that hyperfocus brings you energy when you're done. the classic is the kid building a Lego set, and at the end he just crashes it all down because it didn't come out the way he wants. So he was engaged, but it didn't bring him energy at the end. In politics, some people love talking politics. They're engaged, but it drains them at the end. Other people, it makes them feel great at the end. So keep a note on what you like to do. Keep a note on what you're engaged, what brings you energy. And when you document that and know yourself to know what engages you and brings you energy, you can then start looking at what careers kind of match what those skills do best at. And it gives you a chance not so much to focus on career, but focus on what are the type of things that I want to be doing. I want to be engaged with people. I want to be working by myself. I want to be traveling. So what brings you engagement and energy, and how does that fit into the career decision?
Yeah, we tell our boys all the time, you don't know what you don't know. And I mean, I was having a discussion with a admin at the district during a community event, and they were talking about career in college and career readiness and going into the trades, which, I mean, my whole family has been in carpentry and building houses pretty much their entire career, my dad's side of the family. And where I don't have any issue with that, the only thing that I say, and I echo what you were saying, go out and try different things, because just think about how many different careers or different jobs or different types of jobs that you've had since you started working. Mm. And if you said, okay, well, I'm going to go, train to be a, electrician, whatever it is, or carpenter or whatever, at that point, I'm building those skills for that particular job. Now, I know that a lot of those skills can cross over. But I want our kids to understand that just because you start somewhere doesn't mean you have to stay there. Go out and figure out exactly, like you said, what makes you happy. You have a long time to work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if you look at our parents' generation, they tended to have one or two jobs through their lifetime. Our generation, we tend to have multiple jobs. Could be 5 to 10 kind of different jobs. For the current generation, they say they're going to have 5 different careers, completely unique careers that they work with. And personally, I've had 3. I started off on the technical side. I moved over into the marketing and sales side of things, and now I'm doing a gap year program. So I've had 3 kind of very distinct careers that I've worked through. Probably the first one was the one that I enjoyed the least. What I'm doing now, I like the best, and that career in the middle was kind of a transition for me to get there. So spending some time to figure out, what you want to work on and what you enjoy is good. Personally, I went to school for electrical engineering. There wasn't a lot of thought into it. I was good in math. I wasn't good at any other subjects. So guidance counselors, engineering. And my dad's an electrician, like your family, a lot of builders. So electrical engineering was the choice. It wasn't until I was junior year and I did a co-op, I think between my junior and senior years, that I realized that electrical engineering was working for a defense contractor in a cubicle, 20, 30,000 other people in the building, very regimented. It was not me at all. It didn't match, what I did. So I had gone through that process for something that I did not understand. And I contend most of our, high school students and early college students don't really understand what that job is. And jobs vary. Engineering, I was involved in the civil engineering field for a while. And a civil engineer might sit at the desk working by themselves all day, or they might be the person out trying to win projects, going out and meeting with, potential clients and, kind of explain why their firm is the best one. Or they might be the one on the planning board, going through explaining technical information to the community to get jobs approved. Right. So there's all kind of different aspects in that civil engineering term that folks may be doing. So if you know what you like doing and you can identify it, there's a lot of fields you can go into and be successful at.
Absolutely. So I asked you about what advice that you have for the kids. I'm going to ask you, what advice do you have for the parents? Because the parents are sitting back going, what are we going to do? Our kid has struggled through school, and now we're faced with, is my child going to go off to college or try to go to college? Or what type of job are we going to try to get our child into? Because at the end of the day, a parent's job is to raise our kids to go out into the world and be successful.
Yeah, that experience as a parent myself, it is challenging when your child is struggling. They're struggling in school. They're behind their peers in some type of aspect. And how do you have hope for the future and kind of how things are going to land? So, a couple different things, advice for parents. One is keep working with your child to find something they're good at. That could be in the sports arena, something outside of school. It could be a subject in school, like I mentioned, math for myself. It could be in the sports arena, but that's not always the case. My son personally was karate, was martial arts. He built a great community of friends, etc. That he moved up the ranks, and it was a great positive reinforcement for him. So try finding the things that will help your child have an area of success. That goes to that positive self-image, that self-esteem, that confidence you had to start your own business, to go out there. If you have areas that you're successful, that's really big. And the other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, I'd back off a little bit on the career aspect. And even from a young child, as they say, younger than 5, you can't really talk to kids about what their career is going to be. And even at 6, 7, 8, they'll tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to be a doctor. But you can work with your child from a young age to identify what they like doing, those things that they enjoy that I talked about earlier. And if you can really help your child identify where their strengths are, what they enjoy doing, what they have good aptitudes for, that helps an awful lot when they get to the point of being an adult and trying to make their careers and identify. And I guess the one last thing I tell parents is the workforce is much more forgiving in many ways than school is. There's all kind of ways to make a living. There's all kind of different ways that you can take your strengths and be successful. And school, unfortunately, is kind of limiting as far as where success can be, because their job is specific knowledge they're trying to pass along. So it is limiting in school, and the career aspect is much more open and liberating for folks with learning differences.
I do know that I've read a article just recently that a lot of the big tech companies now are starting to see that they can do a better job at training their future employees than somebody that's gone through a 4-year college. So they would almost rather somebody come in right out of high school so they can train them exactly how they want them to do the job and not have to worry about the 4-year degree.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. It goes back to the apprenticeship, the way things used to be, where it takes someone with the aptitude and train them. And you're right, college has turned into that barrier. A lot of what college proves is that someone can make it through. They can hit deadlines. They can self-manage their time. If they need accommodations, they can find the accommodations. So kind of college does show a lot. There is a lot of benefit for folks who've graduated college. But usually what you learn in college is a small percentage of what you do in the workforce. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, so many people are doing something different in the workforce than what their college degree was. One of the jobs I had, I was managing sales for Asia Pacific. I was running the job as an engineer. My counterpart running for Latin America was an art history major. So I don't think you get 2 degrees that are further apart, and we're both successful kind of running our regions of the world. And so that degree helps you get certain places, but it isn't necessarily I'm training now for the job, which is how a lot of our society sees college.
So for our viewers and listeners, where are the labs at? Where can our viewers and listeners reach out and talk to y'all and possibly come in for some mentorship?
Okay. Yeah. We love talking with folks, whether they come to the lab or not. You can find out more about the lab online, InventiveLabs.org. As our website tells some of our story. We're physically located in Amesbury, Massachusetts, just a little bit north of Boston, as they say. And with COVID's a little more challenged, but we like to have folks in for tours. The best way to understand what we do is to come in and see the place. So we're hoping here over the next few months, we'll be open back up to have tours and kind of people coming in and seeing the place.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I want to come up there and take a tour and firsthand and get to see and feel the experience that our young adults get when they come into the lab.
Yeah, I think the best way for us to tell the story is really through our alumni and kind of what they've done. And there was just an article that came out this week in Leaders Edge magazine. It's really a magazine geared towards executives in the insurance industry, but they interviewed a few companies as far as do hire a neurodiverse workforce. A couple of our alumni were interviewed in it as well. And I think seeing where alumni have gone, what they've done, really does a good job of telling the story of how we try and work with them to put them in a spot that is best for them to succeed.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what it is that you do and your passion for helping our young adults who are transitioning out of high school on to the next chapter in their life. That is so needed for our population, for our sons and daughters. And from Empower Dyslexia, I want to say thank you for all that you do in supporting our children.
Oh, thank you. And, thank you as well for you. I think what you're doing with Empowering Dyslexia to get the word out, to have people who are comfortable talking about their dyslexia or their challenges that they had, I think is really inspiring for other folks who struggle and may not want to talk about it, have that discussion. So I think the awareness you're bringing as far as the strengths for folks with dyslexia, the ability to have folks be proud and confident, the superpower potential of dyslexia, that there's a lot of good skills that come from that as well, and not just see it as a stigma. So I love what you're doing in the podcast, and wish you well going forward with it.
Absolutely. So Tom, I'm going to put all of your contact information, your web address, all of that in the details of this video. That way, if anybody wants to reach out, they can. Again, thank you so much for coming on. And at the end of every show, we like to recommend that if your child is struggling in school and there's not been an identification yet, and you think that there possibly is a learning disability, don't wait. We have templates on our website that you can download. Fill out the template for testing, turn it into your school counselor, get the process started. The quicker that we can get our children identified that have learning disabilities, the quicker we can get them the help that they need. Again, you can go to our website, which is www.empowerdyslexia.org, and download those templates. And we also have tips and events that are going on there. And, we really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to listen and watch our show each and every week. So until next time, here's a word from our sponsors.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.